Antarctica is home to many of the world's most iconic species. We have penguins, whales, albatrosses, and we really want to try to prevent the loss of those species for future generations. So our team looks at conservation and management of the whole ecosystems to find out where the animals and plants ecosystems are most sensitive, most unique in the Antarctic and in the Southern Ocean, and to provide the information that's needed to protect them and conserve them into the future. We work through the Antarctic Treaty System. We provide advice through the UK government into the international agreement that governs Antarctica. We've worked to provide the scientific background and understanding of where animals are living in the oceans, areas that are particularly important, particularly biodiverse for foraging, for breeding, and then using that information to come to an agreement with our international partners, working with lots of colleagues across the world to try to implement protected areas.
Putting instruments on animals that allow us to track their movements by satellite is a really important part of our work. It allows us to find out where animals go in places where humans can't go and do surveys. And when you can retrieve those trackers, so for example, for some of the birds that come back to South Georgia again and again in different years, then you can get very high quality information about exactly where they've been and how their flight behaviour has changed across the season. And that has allowed our team to look at, in high resolution, where those animals go, what habitats are important to them out in the open ocean, and also how they would interact, for example, with the birds that are threatened by fisheries.
Over the past decade or so, we've provided information that's resulted in the protection of large areas of the Southern Ocean and the South Atlantic, and that's equivalent now to around 12% of the world's ocean area, which is now under some form of protection. So whether that's closure to fishing, protection for seabirds and other breeding birds during their sensitive breeding seasons, and protection for animals on the seafloor as well.
There's all kinds of really interesting and unusual new biochemical discoveries yet to be made from some of those species, which again, conserving and understanding them is really crucial. Animals are also a really important barometer of what's going on in terms of climate change. So our studies of how animals react to annual changes in the environment are also really important for us understanding on a broader scale how climate is impacting species in general.
Over the years, British Antarctic Survey have developed such a great resource of long-term monitoring and understanding of the species and habitats in Antarctica and the Southern Ocean. What that means is we can continue to project how these areas are likely to respond to change into the future. We can use that long-term resource to really apply our understanding and ensure that those areas are maintained for future generations.
The Antarctic is a really important laboratory because it's less touched by humans than lots of other places, and we are custodians. So I think it's really our responsibility to make sure we do the best job we can in one of the few pristine places we have left.